2025 is an absolutely stacked year for roller coasters. Like seriously, one of the best of all time. We are getting parks like Epic Universe, Vidanta World, and Flags Qiddiya all opening in the same year. At least they're all supposed to open next year. Epic Universe is the only one I really trust. On top of that, you have some cool investments from Six Flags and also some delayed projects from 2024. So there is a lot of cool coasters to cover. Most YouTubers do a top 20 or maybe a top 30, but here at RC Town we go all out and cover almost every coaster in a top 50 video. Quick side note, we are judging these decisions based on the layouts and how we expect them to ride based on other installations of these models or other conditions such as theming. Of course, since all these coasters are yet to open, these results are in no way final or correct. It is just a prediction of where it will land. So we had the first 25 coasters to cover. Let's jump straight into it. In the 50th spot is a very interesting coaster that still doesn't have a name. It is the first of its kind Mock Wild Mouse. This coaster is coming to Steel Pier in New Jersey as part of a package deal with the Skyrocket 2 that is not going to open in 2025. This looks like a recreation of the original Crazy Mouse layout. It's not doing anything crazy, but I guess it's a positive addition to Mock's catalog. Next up is a more generic family coaster called Bros and Sauce. It is an art engineering family spike launch coaster, which translates to a Vekoma family boomerang. This has two drive tire launches going to Potts Park, which is like a children's theme park, but not too much excitement here. Up next is an actual Vekoma family boomerang called Shootout coming to Oasis at Lake Park. I think the family boomerang is Vekoma's next big thing, and I expect a ton of these to sell across the globe. Next up is a more familiar coaster, and that is Hot Wheels Bone Shaker. Mattel Adventure Park keeps on getting delayed, but I am optimistic for a 2025 opening. This coaster doesn't look like anything crazy. It's made by Chance Rides, which is probably the craziest thing about it. This reminds me of a lot of like Santa Monica West Coaster, but without the iconic location. The thing that I'm excited for most on this coaster is how well they will theme the queue line and the station. In the 46th spot is Magic Mouse XXL. This is such a weird name for a coaster. It really does sound like a model name, but whatever. This is coming to Fantasy Island in the UK and is actually a more interesting coaster than it appears. It is a relatively basic Wild Mouse except for one thing. It has a layout extension. This coaster can choose to optionally run the layout extension. I still don't really understand it fully, but there is some extended layout attached, and the coaster in some way, shape, or form is capable of running with the longer or shorter version. Next up is a Vekoma family coaster called Wild West Coaster coming to Wonderland in France. I love making these videos because I get to learn about the most obscure parks and coasters ever, like who has heard of Wonderland? Anyways, this looks like a relatively basic Vekoma family coaster. It stands at 38 feet tall and has a duration of about a minute. I'm just curious to see how far the park will go with the mine train theme. My guess is they will have some basic looking trains. Up next is a clone of Wild Mouse at Cedar Point coming to Kaleidoscope Park in Russia. This park is so obscure. I'm just assuming this will open up next year and it should be a solid-ish ride. And the 43rd spot is Big Lego Coaster, which is one of 3 B&M family inverted coasters opening up next year. These coasters are made for kids and are just some really expensive, high-quality family coasters. Like more recent B&Ms, I have heard they have ever so slightly of a rattle, but I mean, it's not that bad, and this coaster is made for kids, so don't expect too much. Next up is a Gerstlauer family coaster coming to Jardin d'Acclimatation. I'm cringing so hard at my pronunciation right now. This looks like a pretty quirky family coaster that has a turntable. The color scheme is a bit questionable with all the red track and supports, but it doesn't look that bad. I feel like the trend of family coasters going backwards and forwards is just catching on so fast, and this is an example of it. In the 41st spot is Sea Stallion at Six Flags Qiddiya. This is the first of many coasters from this park making it on the list. This is a Maurer spike coaster, which is an interesting ride to put at this park. Although it is a custom layout, this is not a highly innovative spike coaster. It looks like some of the other ones that have already been built, not one of the quirky ones that concept arts have been released for. Next up, and in the 40th spot, is another coaster at Flags Qiddiya, Sawmill Falls. This is a mock water coaster that is different from their log flume. Very little is known about this coaster. It's 73 feet tall, has 2,500 feet of track, which is actually really long for a mock water coaster. I have a feeling that this coaster would place a lot higher if I knew more details about it, but at the end of the day, water coasters feel more like water rides than roller coasters. As I was trying to find out more information about this ride, I realized that Six Flags Qiddiya has a website. The description of this ride is you are boarding vaporizing vehicles and going through Steamtown's production plant. So this ride has so much more potential than I'm giving it. Up next is Cedar coming to Parc in France. This looks like a quirky Gerstlauer family coaster. The coaster itself doesn't appear to do too much, but the theming on the concept art is elite. The house shack thing looks amazing, and I really hope Parc follows through this one because it's just so cute and charming. Those are some weird adjectives, but I'll go with it. In the 38th spot is Aquila. This is a Vekoma-launched family coaster coming to Mandoria in Poland. It looks like a watered-down version of Big Bear Mountain with only one LAM launch. Big Bear Mountain was a huge success for Vekoma and Dollywood, so I'm really hoping that even with one launch and at a smaller scale, that this model can still be great. This park looks like they spend money to theme their coasters, so I am overly optimistic for this one. Up next is the Mach spinning coaster coming to Legoland Korea. This is the Turbulence layout, so it's a clone of Turbulence at Adventureland, which I heard is a half-decent ride. This park honestly needs more coasters, and I think it's a lovely fit here. In the 36th spot is Quantum Accelerator at Six Flags New England. This is a much-needed family coaster addition to this park. It is an intimate family launch coaster, which are those motorbike-looking things. This is like Arctic Rescue, Dark Coaster, Wave Breaker. This coaster has 2 launches and a quirky layout. Looks like a solid family coaster. Up next is a collection of Vekoma suspended family coasters. This model is one of the hottest models on the market right now, and they are popping up everywhere. In the 35th spot is the SFC coming to Oasis at Lakeport with the family boomerang. This one appears to be the one that is themed the least, so that is why it ends up at the bottom. This is the 453 layout, so it's very common. Dragonflyer is probably the best example. Next, we have Speed of Light at Vidanta World, the first coaster at this park on this list. This is a 305 model and is a clone of Phoenix at Coney Island. This coaster looks to have some good theming, or at least some good landscaping around it. And in the 33rd spot, we have Adrenaline coming to Six Flags Qiddiya. There's a lot of less details about this coaster except the description on the website, which says it's a futuristic adventure, which sounds really cool. It's Saudi Arabia, they have money, I expect quality from them. Next up is another coaster from Vidanta World, and that is Delia's Adventure. This is a really interesting coaster because it is a Mach inverted power coaster. So far, every one of these that has been built is very well themed, and Vidanta World looks like they're going to continue that trend. It's Arthur at Europa Park and 2 other Universal editions, so I'm really curious to see what Vidanta World does with this one. I have heard it is a near clone layout of Arthur, so I'm really curious to see how well the theming is, because that's what makes the ride. The concept art looks really cool in some sort of enchanted forest tiki room type vibe, and overall I'm just super hyped for this park. In the 31st spot is our first coaster from Epic Universe, and that is Curse of the Werewolf. This coaster looks relatively average for a Universal coaster. It is a Mach spinning coaster with a swing launch and relatively average theming. I do expect this coaster to get really long lines due to capacity, and it's probably nowhere near the level of Stardust Racers or Hiko's Wing Gliders. This was a rather late decision to add this coaster to Epic Universe, but I am glad they did because it looks like an enjoyable ride. In the 30th spot is another werewolf themed coaster, and that is Big Bad Wolf, The Wolf's Revenge. This is a B&M family invert coming to Busch Gardens Williamsburg. I'm really curious to see what this coaster will offer. There are some stats listed, but it's nothing crazy. I expect this to be somewhat comparable to Phoenix Rising, and if it is, it will probably land in this spot. Starting off our 20s is Speedboat. This is a Gerstlauer launched family coaster coming to Walibi Belgium. It has 3 LSM launches though, so it's very legit. The 3,000 feet of track make for a long ride, and this coaster does partly follow the old boat ride layout that used to be on this plot of land. I definitely think this will be an interesting family coaster, but how good will it be? Well, only time will tell. In the 28th spot is Gozimba coming to Serengeti Park in Germany. This is the first of its kind model made by Ride Engineer Switzerland, and it looks to be one of the weirdest coasters on this list. Essentially, it's an inverted power coaster mixed with a Gerstlauer Skyfly. So while the layout looks relatively tame, you can actually control your vehicle to go upside down, just like in the flat ride. I actually think this concept is really cool, and I want to see it explored more, but this looks like a cool coaster that its intensity will depend on the rider's preferences. In the 27th spot is Georgia Surfer at Six Flags Over Georgia. This was a delayed project from 2025 that is basically near completion, so it should open next year. This is the first intimate Ultra Surf, which will be interesting to see how it rides. Essentially, it's an intimate surf rider with a pool of water. This will be the biggest intimate surf coaster type ride, and it's an impressive 144 feet tall. The max speed is 60 miles per hour, so I'm expecting this coaster to be a little better than it looks. The last coaster we're covering in this video is Wild Buffalo coming to Mer de Sable in France. This is a small park getting a small-scale GCI Woody edition, so it's a huge investment from them. GCI layouts are so good, and I expect this one to be very similar to something like Bobcat at Great Escape, just made by GCI and not Gravity Group. So that is the first 25 coasters in the top 50. If you stuck around, congratulations, because it was a lot of family coasters and not much else. Next video, we'll be talking about some crazy new roller coasters that look really exciting, like Stardust Racers and Falcon's Flight. So make sure to tune in next week. That's all for today's video, guys. As always, make sure to like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one. Have a great rest of your day. Join the Discord, link in the description. Happy holidays and goodbye.